Good morning. I'm Jordan Slocum, and this is the Doane College Review on 99.5 KUTT. Every Saturday morning from 8 a.m. until 8:30, we take a look at what's going on around Doane College athletics, academics, and more. On today's program, we talk with men's basketball coach Jim Weeks as they start their season next week. We'll also chat with Doane football coach Matt Franzen as the Tigers take on 23rd-ranked Concordia this afternoon, which you can listen to on 99.5 KUTT at 1. And we also have a chat with the Vice President of Enrollment Services at Doane, Joel Wayand. But we begin with basketball, and as mentioned, the basketball season actually gets underway next week for the Doane men and women's teams. On Tuesday, they will travel to Bethany College, and then on Friday, they will be at home against Johnson & Wales University. For men's basketball coach Jim Weeks, practices are underway. And what does he see so far?
You know, we're a year older than last year. We got most of our guys coming back, and I think I've got a sense of urgency. Our kids are practicing well, fairly tough. Toughness is a big piece. It's a part of the game that takes care of all parts. Mental toughness is the ability to reject immediate gratification for long-term growth, integrity, and health. And so our toughness is pretty good. And when you have that, it usually helps you in all parts of the game. Pretty good, darn good teammates, and that's huge. So toughness, being good teammates, and playing smart are three things that we really value, and we're doing a pretty good job in that area.
Has anything surprised you over the course of these first practices?
We spent a lot of time last spring and spent a lot of time this fall with shooting, and this is about as good a shooting group I've ever coached, and I've coached a long time, but boy, they shoot it. So they always say shooting covers a lot of sins. So if we can really spread the floor with our ability to shoot it, that makes it open for drives and it makes it open for our post guys. So really like how we shoot it.
Talking to Doane men's basketball coach Jim Weeks. Now, you've been coaching for a long time, but this is your fourth year now with Doane. What have you learned over the course of your tenure with the Tigers?
Well, I was a high school coach, and we built a K-12 summer league and year league and everything. It was a K-12 program, and when you go to the college level, it's not as much about, obviously it's not developing kindergartners, but it's not as much about developing kids as it is recruiting. Now, as I say that, it's always it's development, but the recruiting part is a big. If you do not have talent, if you don't have no matter how much you improve, you're just good. It's going to be hard for you to be the best in your conference. So what I really learned is that to be good at this, that you have to be a professional recruiter. And what I mean by a professional, it's a 7-day-a-week thing. Amateurs do it 2 or 3, 4 times a week. Professionals do it 7 days a week. So that was the biggest change. And the other thing is the shot clock. And you just have to be better offensively. You got to be more urgent on offensively. You have to expand your game. You have to have more guys able to shoot it. And especially this year with the 30-second shot clock instead of our 35-second shot clock. So shot clock and recruiting.
Speaking of recruiting, how is the newest group that you've brought in? How are they looking?
We've got 2 kids that we recruited last year that will start if we play today, and that's a point guard and a 3-man. So in that regard, we're going to improve in those 2 areas. But we try to do it in a way that in 2 or 3 or 4 years, we want our sophomores, juniors, and seniors to really be solid. So we're trying to recruit classes, kind of like the Big Ten does. They try to recruit classes where they're going to have 3 or 4 guys graduate every year. That really is your heart and soul of your culture. And it's really about developing a culture versus having a team. My first year here, we won 21 games, tied the school record. That was a team. But we're trying to develop a program where we're good every year because of the type of people we bring in.
Talking to Doane men's basketball coach Jim Weeks. Any players stand out in terms of leadership out of this group?
We have Trevor Cyboran, is a senior from Ravenna. He's the guy that's probably been the most vocal, and we always believe that your leaders need to speak up and stand out, and he's probably been the most vocal. Hootie Holt, a senior from North Star, has been pretty vocal. Those guys do most of the leading in regards to speaking up and standing out in practice. Reed Williams is a junior from Lincoln Southwest who is a just great what he does on the floor and how he cares about his teammates. He's not as vocal, but boy, he's not as vocal when we meet together, when we break down, but on the floor he is. So those three guys really are guys that I think that stand out amongst our group.
In the GPAC preseason coaches poll, your team was put 10th out of 11th. Yep. Do you use that at all to try to motivate the guys, or do you just ignore that and say, it doesn't matter?
Well, I think you always have to use it. It's really it doesn't really matter if you're picked first or picked last. It's how you respond, and no matter what, So it's the response of my first year. We were picked 9th or 10th, and we got 4th, and we tied the school record. So, it's a little disappointing, but it's how we're going to respond and how we're going to use it. So, what I really learned as well is you just have to take the time to do it, the right way is a cliche, but just do it where you're getting in the guys that you really like to coach, kids that like to be in the gym, kids that like to be around each other, kids that are good not just on the basketball floor, but they're good on campus, and they fit into the culture here at Doane once. A lot of times people forget it's not just wins and losses. There's some inherent hidden things that are really important, and that is make sure you got good people, make sure you have a sense of toughness, so you're working hard, and so I think we're getting the right kids in that area.
Once again, talking with Jim Weeks, the head men's basketball coach at Doane. When you look at the GPAC as a whole, how does the league look?
It's probably the second best conference in the country. It's just one of those things where, we had a team last year, I think, had won 3 national championships in the last 15 years, didn't even make our conference tournament. It's tough. Everybody says their conference is tough. You ever talk to them? But ours is, for example, Hastings College and Doane, I think we were, toward the bottom last year. We swept the GPAC or the KCAC winner, which was Tabor. We played them twice. We beat them. They beat them twice and beat them. And we swept that team, and then they won their conference. And we were at the bottom of ours. So it's a really, really tough basketball conference. And if you're at the top of your conference, you're probably going to be in the top 20 in the country.
Last question, Coach. You got the first games of the season starting up next week. What do you want to see from your team in those opening games?
Well, obviously, we want to, when we come down, both sides of the floor, we just got to have positive possessions. We got to make sure that it's kind of like we want to have a great at bat. Just don't get cheated on both sides. So defensively, obviously, we believe in staying in front of our guy, and it's one and done. And on offense, we want to make sure that we are sharing the ball, because a passing team's a happy team, and that we have a sense of balance, that we're getting to the rim, and we're also able to spread the floor and make shots from the perimeter. But it all comes down to what you're doing in each possession. Make sure you value the possession, and you're scoring at a high percentage, or you're stopping at a high percentage.
Once again, that was Jim Weeks, the head men's basketball coach at Doane College. The Tigers will start their season on the road on Tuesday, along with the women's basketball team at Bethany College, and then the home opener next Friday against Johnson & Wales. Again, this is the Doane College Review on 99.5 KUTT. Still to come, we'll talk with Doane football coach Matt Franzen and Joel Wayan, the Vice President of Enrollment Services at Doane. First, a quick look at this past week in Doane athletics, starting back last Saturday. The soccer teams were in action hosting Dordt College. The men were victorious 5-2. The women fell in overtime 3-2. On Tuesday, the Doane volleyball team picked up a huge upset over second-ranked Midland University in 3 sets. On Wednesday, the soccer teams competed at home against Concordia. The men played to a 1-1 draw. The women fell 3-0. On Thursday, the volleyball team defeated Grace University in 3 sets. Then on Friday night, the volleyball team fell in 3 sets to number 12-ranked Northwestern. And one other note, the Doane wrestling team is ranked 18th in the initial NAIA Top 20 poll, and it's the first time in program history that Doane has been in the top 20. As for today, as mentioned, the Doane football team takes on Concordia at 1, which you can listen to on 99.5 KUTT. Elsewhere, the cross-country teams are at the NAIA Mid-States Classic, and the soccer teams are on the road at Morningside. Once again, this is the Doane College Review on 99.5 KUTT. I'm Jordan Slocum. As mentioned once again, the 6th-ranked Doane football team is at number 23 Concordia this afternoon. Kickoff at 1, pregame at 12:30 here on 99.5 KUTT. Last time Coach Matt Franzen's team competed was 2 weeks ago, that big win against Dakota Wesleyan.
We played real well in the second half. I think in the first half we played well also, but I credit our team for not flinching when we were down 17-14 at halftime to a really good team and in a really big game. I think our guys, our team, and we didn't do anything special, contrary to popular belief. In the locker room at halftime, the guys just stayed focused and just kept playing, and it took a spark, which we got on the opening kick return of the second half, and at that point our guys just kind of took that spark and ran with it and played really well throughout the second half, and so we felt good after the game. Obviously, really happy with the way that things came out.
I'd imagine that half would be the strongest half you've had this season. Was the game as a whole, you think, the strongest game to date?
Well, as a whole, I don't know if I would necessarily say that. I think maybe the week before when we played Nebraska Wesleyan, that was probably more consistent through 4 quarters. And, the first half of the Dakota Wesleyan game, defensively, we gave up a couple big plays. And offensively, there were times where we sputtered. So I'd say as a whole, maybe a week before was more of a complete game, but considering the opponent, we're happy with the way that we played, because I think that was a very good team that we played here with Dakota Wesleyan, and they gave us everything we wanted, and like I said, our kids responded very well.
I'm talking to Doane coach Matt Franzen. Your team's coming off of a bye week now. What are some of the things you focused on during the bye?
Well, the first thing is we went through our roster and targeted some of our guys that maybe needed some time off, and there weren't anybody or any players that had necessarily glaring injuries that that any miracles happened in the bye week, but more it was guys that had some nagging injuries, a sore foot, a sore hip, that sort of thing, a shoulder, that we were able to give a couple days off, or in some cases a week off, and just not have them practice, period, and then come back here in game week. And I think with those guys, you're going to see more of a full-speed performance. In some cases, you won't even know the difference, because a few of our guys have been playing pretty tough with some pain, and it hasn't slowed them down. But like I said, some of those guys now hopefully will be able to play closer to their full potential. So that was the biggest thing we did. Other than that, as far as practices, we focused in position-wise on some of the fundamentals that maybe you don't work on as much when you're going from week to week, changing up the game plans, and we went back to some fundamental work and hopefully got a little bit better as just as football players, and not so much worrying about the next opponent during the bye week.
It's hard to ever predict things, but is this team where you thought it would be as far as the level they're at after 6 games, or do you think they'd be better or maybe worse, or anywhere in between?
Well, it is hard to predict that. I guess I thought the way that we finished last season, where we won our last 4 games, and the good performance in the Morningside game, that we had the potential this year to come out and do some really, really good things. And so, but you never know. Potential doesn't mean anything until it shows up and until it's delivered. And I think every coach at the beginning of the season, if he's an optimist at all, sees potential in his team. And so I think to this point, I think we've delivered on our potential. I mean, we're 6-0, and if you would have told me that going into the season, I would have been thrilled. And so no, I think we've done as well as we could. I wouldn't say it's a surprise to me, because like I said, I think the potential was there all along, but I'm happy with where we're at, and I think we still have a ways to go. I think we can still get better. We can still play better. We have to focus on the small things and continue to improve on the little things, and then I think the game performances generally are going to take care of themselves.
Talking to Doane head football coach Matt Franzen. You've got Concordia up next. Looking first at the Bulldog offense, what do you see?
Well, we have some questions as to what we're going to see, because they've played 2 quarterbacks a little bit, but they've made a change in their starter this week, at least as far as the 2 deep that we have. And the guy that finished the Midland game, Garrett Folkert, is listed now as the starter, and he came off the bench in that game to really spark them and bring them back, and had a big second half rally and overtime win. So that'll be a little bit different, but T.J. Austin was listed as the starter before, and we're still expecting him to play. Don't know for sure if it's an injury thing or otherwise, but like I said, we're expecting him to play. He runs the ball real well as far as the quarterback goes, and Folkert, not as big a running threat, but throws the ball well. So they're fairly well balanced. Bryce Collins, the running back, is I think as good as we're going to see here through the season, and so we need to keep track of him also in the running game.
Switching to the Concordia defense, what do you see?
Well, defensively, I'd say that's their strength, and my guess is that Coach Winter would tell you the same thing. They're rated, after the last week, I want to say third nationally statistically. They were first prior to the Midland game, and I think that dropped them to maybe third in the country statistically. So they're a very, very strong defense. Really good secondary. They have a corner who is maybe the best in the league, and Terrence Roby, and he's a kid that transferred a year ago from Northern Illinois, so a legitimate Division I player out there at one corner for him. And then their front seven is very strong. They have a nose guard that's a 300-pounder, and he's a little different than what we've seen. Dakota Wesleyan had a 300-pounder, but he was 6'5". He was tall and long, and this one is about 5'10", so he's more of a plugger in there. And then, but their defensive line is good. Their linebackers are good. Tate Sybil used to play safety for them, and they moved him down to outside linebacker to get him closer to the line of scrimmage. And he's a playmaker. He's a dynamic player. He's a senior with a lot of experience. And so anyway, they're solid on defense. They don't give up a whole lot in the run game or pass game. So we're going to have to play well and be smart offensively to be productive against them.
Talking to Doane football coach Matt Franzen. Last question, Coach. Biggest keys for a win over Concordia?
Well, I think going on the road, we lose a little bit of our 12th man that seems like we have at home, and so being able to play well. And I think against a good team like this, mistakes on our end could put ourselves in a rough spot. So we need to play relatively mistake-free. Take care of the football and avoid the costly penalties and that sort of thing. And then special teams, like I say every week, I'm still happy with our special teams this season and Jordan Peterson and the things that he's been able to do, and I think that'll play in. Concordia has a really good kicker, Adam Myros, and he was, I think, second-team all-conference last season. And so this may be the best kicker that we've played against up to this point. So that'll be something that, like I said, with our special team units, we're going to have to do a good job with field position and punting and in the return game, like we've had all season. We need to continue to work well there, and that'll be a big part of the game too.
That was Doane football coach Matt Franzen, and once again, number 6 Doane travels to number 23 Concordia this afternoon. Listen on 90.5 KUTT, pregame at 12:30, kickoff at 1. Thanks again for listening to the Doane College Review on 90.5 KUTT. We wrap up things today with an interview with Joel Wayan, the Vice President of Enrollment Services at Doane. First off, Joel, you've been involved with college enrollment for over a decade now. What are some of the things that you've noticed that have changed over that time?
The one that sticks out to me most is really just the options that students have when they're looking for a college. I remember back when I was looking at a college and I'd get things in the mail. But when you did that, you'd still just look at a few pictures within a brochure. Nowadays, when students can go to the internet, get virtual campus tours, basically place themselves on campuses, I think their world of options has opened up tremendously, and students are more comfortable crossing state borders. They're more comfortable at least considering schools that are further away from them, and they get a better chance to see what a school has to offer before they will actually show the school that they're interested. So as a result, from us, a lot of the first inquiries that we get are when a student actually applies online. They don't make their interests known until they get to a point where they're really ready to kind of put you in the top 3 to 5. And that's a lot different, I think, than 15 years ago when students were they were just throwing out interest. I also think competition is incredible for students right now because it seems everywhere, wherever you turn, a school is looking to increase their enrollment. Doane's no different than that. And so as everybody's trying to grow, we're not seeing the number of students, specifically in the state of Nebraska, grow who are graduating. So that's a bit of a challenge. And then finally, I think financial aid, and particularly when I talk about merit aid, is very significant because everybody is offering, whether it be academic merit or some form of co-curricular type activity merit, it's all out there. And that wasn't the case 15 years ago. It's become much more of a competitive environment, and people are using merit aid in order to attract students to their institution.
In talking about the internet stuff earlier, I think that's so huge too, having a strong web presence, because if someone maybe is interested in your school and your website is bad and the information's out of date, that would turn someone off, I think.
Oh, absolutely. So a lot of schools put a lot of time and energy into their website. And one of the biggest challenges that come with the website is I still think that definitely navigation is important, but you might like a site for the content or for the way it looks, and I might not like it. Another person goes to it and they like it. Some of that, I think, does still come down to what your personal expectations are of a website or how things look, which I think only adds to the challenge of it. But yes, as institutions, we spend a lot of time looking at both the content and the way that our site is structured to make sure that it's easy to get where students want to go.
This is the Doane College Review on 90.5 KUTT, talking to Joel Wayan, the Vice President for Enrollment Services at Doane. Looking at the financial aid situation that's always changing, what does it look like right now?
Well, I think it's a big challenge for families because they're seeing tuition prices, whether it be at a public institution or a private school, continue to kind of go up over each year. And that creates a lot of trepidation for families who are making sure that they want to invest in the right educational experience for their son or daughter. So schools have to work very hard to make sure that they can share with families not only the value that they obtain by getting a degree from that institution, but furthermore just making them comfortable with the price that they're really going to pay. So for us, as institutions, we put a lot of money into our scholarships, whether it be, like I said before, academic merit or co-curricular merit. Schools have to in some way discount their tuition, or the better way to put it is we put our tuition on sale for a variety of different reasons for different people, dependent upon their academics or co-curricular abilities. And so when we see that, we just recognize that with tuition being what it is for most schools, students have to have a way to fund it. And I'm concerned, frankly, about less options for students, particularly with relationship to state and federal funding. I believe schools are having to pick up that slack to make sure that parents and families can fund it. So counseling students on what their options are is very important to us. Getting them in here to talk one-on-one with our admissions counselors and talk to financial aid offices, I think is critical. If they don't do that, they just won't feel as comfortable with what their options are. So checking with schools early and often, I think, is a big part of the college selection process.
And it's another challenge on your guys' end because as politics happen and people change positions in state and federal government, it changes what you're able to do.
Oh, yeah, and we've got to be nimble. We talk an awful lot just here internally about what the challenges that the individual students and families are going through and what controls we have on a regular basis that we can modify to try to help make opportunities work. I still think a lot of times what it comes down to is families being upfront and honest with regards to what they're able to pay, what they can do with schools, so that we can counsel them appropriately. But I do think as students look earlier in their high school for their college options, it's getting to a financial aid counselor, and I'm not talking about an investment banker or anything like that. I'm talking about actually going to a college or a university financial aid office and asking for advice over the course of the next 2 to 3 years while they finish high school for what they can do to put themselves in the best position to be prepared for the costs of higher education. There's just so many moving components to this that I think people need to be educated on what their options are in order to be comfortable in the end.
Talking to Joel Wayan, the Doane Vice President for Enrollment Services, you've touched on it a little bit, but what are some of the things that your office is doing to try to help those students out?
Well, I think we're recognizing the challenges with making a college decision and the variety of offers and opportunities out there. So for us, in the admissions office specifically, we're oftentimes looking at how we can make the process a little bit simpler, less overwhelming, but also recognizing that students are planning a little bit earlier. They're taking college-level courses early in their high school career, so making sure they understand the benefit of that. So two things really quick. One is just a couple of years ago, we allow students to apply using what we call self-reported academic information. So instead of requiring them to get a hard copy of their high school transcript and their ACT or SAT score in order to submit that for admission, we allow them to self-report on their application. And by doing so, we will admit students based off of self-reported information. Now, if they choose to enroll, we ask them to get us their official information so that we can back up what they've self-reported. But at the early stages, when you consider schools get upwards for us, we'll get 2,000 applications, and larger universities obviously get a lot more than that. 2,000 applications, of which 300, 350 students enroll. You get a lot of paperwork on students that do not enroll. So what we're trying to do is make it easier for students at the stage in which they're just kind of exploring to become admitted and understand that decision is made. The other thing that we recently did was we introduced what we called 3-year programs. This recognizes that students are coming to school or college with anywhere from 12 to sometimes close to 30 credits. And that translates into a full year of college credits that you've gotten done. And what students want to know is how does that benefit them when they come to a college? And unfortunately, there's still some, question as to how those credits will ultimately transfer into a 4-year institution. The reality is oftentimes they'll transfer in. It's a matter of if they take the place of a required course. And every student for our curriculum, they have to have electives. So bringing in those credits can definitely get them ahead. What we want to help students do is understand from an early planning stage what they can do to put themselves ahead of the game. I'd also mention that we're looking at becoming test optional, and I'm just exploring this right now. And what that really means is that students can apply to be admitted to Doane without taking or without submitting an SAT or an ACT test score. And it's realizing that really to evaluate a student on their ability to be successful in college is more on a variety of things and isn't solely based oftentimes on a test score. This is different, but a lot of schools actually do it. And it's for us, we think it'll open up ourselves to a more diverse audience of individuals who maybe see the ACT or the SAT as a biased test.
Talking to Joel Wayan, the Doane Vice President for Enrollment Services. Last question, Joel. What are some of the things that appear to be on the horizon collegiately throughout Nebraska and throughout the country?
Well, this is kind of a piggyback on what I already said with respect to competition, but I think that's only going to intensify. Again, as there's approximately the same number of graduates, but schools all wanting to grow, everybody's trying to get the same students. So I only think that's going to intensify, and that's going to put some of the smaller schools in the region and in the nation really in a tough position because it will be tough for them to survive. Student diversity, because the minority populations in many respects, particularly here in Crete, are becoming the majority. Students are becoming more diverse in nature as they go to colleges and universities. So the schools that are welcoming that, the schools that are being open to that, and certainly we're trying to do that here at Doane, makes us hopefully more stable for the long term. But I think diversity is a big component to it. And then I think we've all got to evolve and fight a business-as-usual mentality. The way we've done it over the course of the last 10 years probably won't be enough to make it the next 10 to 15 years. We've got to be, and this is tough for education, we've got to be more nimble. Education isn't known for transitioning very quickly, and I think that's something that's going to be a challenge for us as we move forward.
My thanks to Joel Wayan, the Vice President of Enrollment Services at Doane College. And that'll wrap up today's Doane College Review. Remember, we're on the air at 8 a.m. every Saturday morning here on 99.5 KUTT. I'm Jordan Slocum.